And just this broader topic, Garrett Haake, I asked a Trump advisor yesterday if he thought that Trump would be a voice asking his supporters not to resort to violence should he lose. And he said no, he would not. Where do you think the law enforcement communities stand on this? Where do you think the FBI is today after being on the receiving end of that? Couldn't view that as anything other than an attempt to interfere in an ongoing investigation. Donald Trump saying, don't investigate my supporters, and then lying at his rally saying they were protecting the bus. You don't protect a bus by almost running it off the road.
Yeah, look, I mean, political trolling is one thing, but doing so at 70 miles an hour on a highway with really a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit is pretty much just a suggestion down here in Texas, is incredibly reckless. I mean, the law enforcement perspective is interesting on this. The FBI field office in San Antonio come out and confirm on the record that they were investigating this. The FBI doesn't, generally speaking, like to come out and tell you what they're investigating or what they're not. So I think that speaks to a degree of seriousness with which they're treating this. But law enforcement doesn't want to be in the middle of this. This is not what they want to be doing on Election Day or any other day, essentially refereeing back and forth between over-animated political supporters of one party or another. The other interesting political play to this is that Democrats, they did cancel these additional Kamala Harris events, or part of that bus tour events, out of an abundance of caution. But they also don't want to necessarily overplay this either. I mean, Texas is potentially on track to have more than 12 million people cast votes in this election. It would be an incredible breakthrough here in terms of turnout in the state. And Texas Democrats want people to understand that coming out to vote is going to be safe. They're not going to be harassed. They don't want people to worry about the fact that they've got, people out in these jacked up trucks who might be causing trouble. So, the political ramifications of this are bizarre. I don't think this moves a vote one way or the other, but I think everybody kind of would like to see this thing toned down here in Texas, where there is a real, honest-to-God electoral interest and turnout story happening, not this sideshow.
Garrett, what is the electoral story there? What is going on? I've talked to, obviously, I worked for a former Texas governor who became a Republican president. This was his home. This was friendly territory for Republicans. That has been a changing story. You've been on the trail with Beto O'Rourke, and you've gone back and covered some of the big national stories that have touched Texas disproportionately, the pandemic, the massacre in El Paso. What is happening in Texas?
I mean, I think there are a couple of things happening all at once. For the longest time, Texas was completely written off as a battleground state. And I think Beto O'Rourke, despite not winning that race 2 years ago, showed people in a state that had been gerrymandered and kind of left behind, showed Democrats in particular that, hey, your vote might actually make a difference here. And this cycle, you've got a ton of competitive races. There are half a dozen at least really competitive House races here. The Texas State House is really competitive for the first time. The Biden campaign has been kind of on the ground here, filling in the gaps. But this has been a grassroots awakening of sorts among Democrats in Texas who can smell the possibility that maybe this blue Texas that people have been hearing about, in some cases for their entire politically active lives, might actually be possible. I think you combine that with certain elements of the pandemic. Texas has had this weird one step forward, two steps back voter access issues this year. The Republican governor added days to the early voting calendar, then took away vote drop-off locations in Harris County and in other big counties. Sort of got people really defensive about their voting rights, about the opportunity to come out and be a part of this. And you saw that in the early vote. And I think as the early vote period went on in Texas, it gained more and more steam. You get through that magic number of 12 million votes or so in Texas, and this is anybody's ballgame. The models don't count that high, So anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen here is not telling you the truth. We're in borderline uncharted territory about what Texas could look like on an election night.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.